talking about the Sydney Swans before. So they've stood down all 5 players involved in the, I'll call it the Pullman Hotel, which most people know better as the Hilton Hotel. The Pullman Hotel incident Sunday night, Monday morning. The 5 players being Riley Bice, Nick Blakey, Isaac Heaney, James Jordan, and Chad Warner apparently will now not be considered for selection for the remainder of the 2026 AFL season. Now, I assume this means the finals, and having those 5 players not available will seriously dent the Swans' finals ambitions. And there's another issue here as well. We mentioned this yesterday, and I've done a bit of work on it. So the Rugby League, the NRL, for quite a while now, has had a no-fault stand-down policy. And what it means is if a player is charged with a serious crime, like a sexual offence, then they can't keep playing. Now, I think they still get paid. There was one NRL player, though, who was out of the game for, I think, 3 years and was then had all charges against him dropped. And this is where this sort of thing is problematic. And anyway, Chris Minns, the New South Wales Premier, is saying the AFL should do the same thing. Now, I hasten to add, the 5 Sydney Swans players have not been charged with anything criminal yet, and they may never be. The sanction they've had thus far is from the club itself, saying we will not consider them for selection for the remainder of the season. But if one or more of them is charged with a serious sexual offence, the AFL could suspend them for bringing the game into disrepute. But if they were rugby league players, they would automatically be suspended for as long as it took to establish their guilt or their innocence. Shane McInnes, well-known broadcaster, hosts Sunday Sport, will be filling in for me next Tuesday, and prominent Essendon supporter. Shane, good morning.
Morning, Tom.
Well, firstly, the Swans, the 5 players involved in the Pullman Hotel incident stood down for the rest of the season, and it's not just any 5 players, it's 5 stars of the Sydney team being Riley Bice, Nick Blakey, Isaac Heaney, James Jordan and Chad Warner. Do you reckon that's the end of the Swans for 2026?
I think it's the end of their premiership aspirations, absolutely, when you take out 5 players of that calibre. I think there's still a question, though, over the ban. Yes, they've been rubbed out for the rest of the season, but that could be potentially 3 games if they just made it to a semi-final. It could be 5 games if they were to make it to a grand final. And I think on public sentiment, given what has unfolded, given the seriousness of the allegations, you've got to ask, is 3 games really enough? If that's what it was actually to turn out to be. I would have rathered 5 games plus in this instance and have it definitive.
I mean, a game is a game, but a final is worth, 2 normal games, surely.
No, I don't think so in this instance, Tom. I think we've seen penalties handed out. I mean, you go back a couple of years when you had Greater Western Sydney misbehaving at a wacky Wednesday and dressing up inappropriately and simulating sex acts and that kind of thing. And I think the biggest penalty there was 4 weeks. I mean, this is far more serious for mine, given where the allegations are stemming from, given the involvement of 5 players, one in particular. I thought it should have been a specified amount, but yeah, you're right. I mean, if they were to miss finals, potentially even a grand final, that's significant for their careers, but I think that's secondary as well.
Remember, this is the club's punishment. Could the AFL still come in and say, you've all brought the game into disrepute, here's another 3 weeks on top of that?
No, I think this will be tied up in that. The statement from the Sydney Swans, albeit incredibly brief, said that the AFL was satisfied with what had been handed down. I think they could have done more, though, here, Sydney. I think you've got to look at the club as a whole too, Tom. And, I mean, you look at the sentiment around treatment toward women, and the AFL and clubs always talking about respect for women. I think the club should have come out in itself saying, you know what, regardless of guilt or innocence around this alleged sexual assault, our reputation around respect for women has taken a beating, is in tatters as a result of this. We need to do further education, speaking to victims. I think that would have sent a message as well. I think they've been neglectful in that position too.
Do you find that it's bizarre that, somewhat intelligent young men could do something so incredibly stupid this close to finals?
Amazing. Look, I know young men go out, but as a professional athlete, let's remember one thing, Tom. They were on the work dime. Their hotel room, their transport, it was all being paid for by the Sydney Swans and the AFL. They were on a work trip to Melbourne. What are they doing out until 3:30 in the morning in the first instance when they've got finals in a few weeks' time? I mean, they beat Essendon for crying out loud. They're out until 3:30 in the morning. Then they get back at 4 o'clock and then invite women back to their room. It is just completely inappropriate in the first instance and totally lacks professionalism, and they've only got themselves to blame for putting themselves in this position.
Now, earlier on in the program, I described you as a heavyweight of the Essendon Football Club. You know, your opinion is sought. And we learned today that this South Australian businessman called Brett Crabtree he says he'll challenge the Essendon board if they don't appoint James Hird as coach. Now, Carlton has just appointed Josh Fraser after the best job application you will ever see. Josh grew up barracking for Collingwood. He played for Collingwood. He then played for Gold Coast, and yet now he's coach of Carlton. Why do so many Essendon people, you included, think you have to have an Essendon person to coach the Essendon Football Club? Don't you just want to get the best coach?
Let's firstly say the decision was made a hell of a lot easier for Carlton than it's been for Essendon, given Josh Fraser's win-loss record. I've never said it has to be an Essendon person. I thought that if it is purely about marketing and purely about imaging for the Essendon Football Club, then James Hird is your man. There's no other question. If it's about membership, if it's about sponsorship, then James Hird is your man. That will instill membership. It will instill sponsors immediately for the 2027 season. However, if you are looking long-term, and we've had this argument in the office, that ultimately, 6 months into next year, it's going to be about wins and losses for the Essendon Football Club. Therefore, they have every right to have gone through a process to find who is best equipped to improve the list and improve the win-loss record at the Essendon Football Club. That may still be James Hird, but to say that it can only be James Hird and for someone outside of the board to threaten that, if it's not James Hird, we're going to come and challenge you, I think that is blackmail of the highest order, and it's really the last thing the football club needs.
This threat, I guess, by this South Australian businessman who says he's got a full ticket, he's a 33-year member of the club, does live in South Australia, runs a private wealth company. His name is Brett Crabtree, but he says they will spill the board if the current board does not give the coaching job to James Hird. Christine says this latest revelation about a board spill indicates to me exactly why Essendon is where it is on the ladder. There's obviously something very rotten in the club. Maybe, Christine. I mean, again, if I was an Essendon supporter, I would just want the club to get the best possible coach. But what Shane McInnes said, he said, for getting bums on seats and memberships and marketing dollars in the short term, James Hird would achieve that. But by the middle of next year, if Essendon have a horrendous start to the season, people will forget about that and people will stop turning up to games, as has already happened with Essendon supporters. Essendon can't afford to get it wrong because, they're a proud club, they're a big club, they're a club that the AFL wants to see succeed because, Essendon, when it's going well, puts bums on seats. And, the whole, and I once had a conversation with Gillon McLaughlin about this at a lunch that he spoke at. But he said that the goal of each individual club wants to win the flag. That is obvious. What the AFL wants is for the supporters of every club to think almost every year that their club has a chance. That there is hope. Now, obviously, by the end of the season, the hope dies for a lot of teams. But that's sort of what they want. 133693. Preston, hello.
Morning, Tom. How you going?
Yeah, good, Preston. Now, you're a Swan supporter?
Yeah, I've been a diehard Swans fan my whole life, and I'm just absolutely angry, very angry at the players. They're not young 18, 19-year-old first, second-year players. This is leadership group players.
Yeah, it is.
And after losing 4 grand finals in a row, this feels like losing a 5th one in a row. Because that's what they've done to the fans and to their teammates. They've pretty much cost themselves a flag. I mean, Sydney has some great depth, and there are some young kids who could step up, and we could give it a crack, but it's only going to be hard. But I took my 2 young daughters to the Sydney St Kilda the other week, and both my daughters are obsessed with Heaney. They think he's great, and I'm not. Whatever happens, these things happen at Bucks nights and whatnot, but they don't happen 2 weeks out from the finals, and it's just absolute moronic behaviour from grown men.
I agree with you, Preston. And it was something interesting that occurred at the start of the week on Monday was the AFL appears to have delayed the announcement of the All-Australian squad. And I can only assume, Preston, it's because some of these Sydney players, it wouldn't surprise me if Chad Warner was in the All-Australian squad. He's had a brilliant season. Isaac Heaney could be in it. I don't know about Nick Blakey this year, but, that's going to be awkward for the AFL. But I agree. And also, Okay, they beat Essendon on the weekend. I mean, I'm sorry, Essendon, but, for the number 2 team playing basically the bottom team, I mean, it would have been interesting if they had lost, but they didn't. That's not worthy of some gigantic celebration. I don't know, maybe because they thought they were out on tour. They were in Melbourne, not in Sydney. They could act like idiots, and it's come back to bite them. And again, Sydney, by virtue of finishing second on the ladder, would have played its finals at home. Huge advantage on the SCG, now largely thrown away.